So first things first, no, you do not have to have seen Murder on the Orient Express in order to enjoy Death on the Nile. In fact, the two are barely connected, so whether you're like me and sat through the disappointment of Orient Express 5 years ago, or chose to skip it entirely, won't have an effect on your enjoyment/understanding of the new film. Both stories follow a bunch of strangers stuck aboard a transportation vessel when, oh no, a murder is committed. But fear not, the world's greatest detective just happens to be stuck on board to solve the case before the runtime expires. So technically, Death on the Nile is kinda sorta the sequel to Murder on the Orient Express. There are a few connections that might make you say, ah, yes, these movies are connected, but nothing outrageous. Death on the Nile's plot is remarkably similar to its predecessor. Granted, they're both Agatha Christie stories, but to come out within 5 years of each other seems a little redundant. Just to show you how close these two movies are, Orient Express follows the story of a murder that occurs aboard a legendary train. Death on the Nile follows the story of a murder aboard a boat riding along a legendary river. Now, if you liked Orient Express, it bodes well for your opinion of Death on the Nile, as the latter, or sequel if you will, is the far better film of the two. Both had stellar casts, but the payoff to the mystery in Nile, along with the emotional connection the movie successfully achieves with its audience, is far more satisfying and real than that on Orient Express. It's as if Orient Express said, here's Daisy Ridley, Josh Gad, Johnny Depp, Willem Dafoe, Judi Dench, Leslie Odom, Penelope Cruz, Michelle Pfeiffer, and an Agatha Christie story. Who cares about the execution? It's bound to succeed. Death on the Nile, on the other hand, does a far better job making you care about the murder and the characters surrounding the mystery. Speaking of characters, at the center of the movie is the film's main guy, Detective
Hercule Poirot.
Or Hercule Poirot if you want to go full uncultured American. The detective is a combination of Sherlock Holmes and the most interesting man in the world from those old Dos Equis commercials. He uses his premier werewolf game skills to determine who's lying and who's telling the truth en route to finding a killer. He's once again played by the film's director, Kenneth Branagh, who was essentially born to play this man. I mean, he is without a doubt the best part of the film, both in front of the camera and behind it. Though Branagh's attention is likely not with his Agatha Christie film despite its recent release, but instead with the Oscar news this week that saw the filmmaker break a record held partially by who else but Walt Disney. Branagh became the first man to be nominated across 7 different Academy Award categories in his career. But we go back to Death on the Nile, which was not nominated, nor do I see that happening in 2023, but I digress. There's a nice little unexpected black and white backstory on how the detective got his mesmerizing mustache, which honestly could have stood alone as its own award-winning short film. It takes place at the very beginning, so don't time your entry. The cast is fine and you get some strong performances from all the heavy hitters, but after the black and white mustache backstory and an early club scene that introduces us to our main characters, the first act drags. Well, the story does at least. The cinematography of his CGI'd Egypt and the eventual Nile is really well done and essentially worked as a tourist ad that made me want to book a trip to the pyramids. But again, while the film was visually enticing, outside of the first 10 to 15 minutes, it pulls out of the harbor at tugboat speed. When the, spoiler alert, Death on the Nile occurs, the movie and the metaphorical boat pick up speed. The twists, turns, and ultimate payoff are worthy of a watch. You won't get a groan like many of us did with how the ending of Orient Express unfolded on our screens. Each of the suspects aboard the boat fit the bill for a killer, which achieves the movie's goals in keeping audiences guessing and engaged, and the result is quite satisfying. Nile is ultimately a throwback to classics like 1945's And Then There Were None, which remains as the best Agatha Christie film. It's not quite 2019's Knives Out, but it's also not trying to be. It's a big-budget blockbuster, and its larger-than-life visuals are meant for a theater and a fun 2-hour and 7-minute escape. Death on the Nile receives a 6.9.